Hello, welcome back to our live coverage of the United Nations Climate Talks here in Durban, South Africa. As our regular viewers will know, one of the key goals of us being here is to try and give a voice to people who aren't always heard. And Tamara, that's something you've been working on very closely. Can you tell us a little bit about your Powerful Hands project?
Well, CARE works in amplifying the voices of the people most vulnerable to a changing climate. And so one of the videos we put together is called Powerful Hands. And what it does is, what we found is a lot of videos, especially in the last couple of years, have been about impact. And while people in developing countries are the most impacted, especially women, they're often not looked at as agents of change. They're usually looked at as only victims. And while people are definitely suffering from a changing climate, we really wanted to portray that people are using their powerful hands working together to better the planet and the people who live in it.
So how did you go about making the video? It wasn't your typical process, was it?
No. The video itself, I'm actually the one that we're going to show, is a video that has pictures from around the world and is telling our message about women as agents of change. However, we have been working on other videos that are more participatory. And that's one of the things that I work on, is more communications for development. So I'm the Climate Change Communications Officer for CARE, and I'm losing my voice because I've been communicating too much. And basically, I work with CARE offices to train local journalists and CARE staff in how to tell how people are impacted, but also what they're doing about that. And then those videos are used not only for the people in those communities to spread the word about climate change, but also used for advocacy and awareness raising within their country themselves, and even at a global level.
And what kinds of steps are women taking to adapt to climate change and to cope with this problem?
Right. Coping and adaptation are different. Coping is typically a very short-term strategy, and adaptation is looking at things for the long term. What we're finding is we have a tool called the Climate Vulnerability Capacity Awareness. And basically what it is it's a process of understanding how a community is vulnerable to a changing climate. But what's people don't often understand is that even within communities and even within households, people are vulnerable in different ways. So a woman is going to be vulnerable very differently than maybe a young man or an elder man. And so, for example, we worked in a community in Kenya recently that was 2 hours from the Dadaab refugee camp, where women, it's a Somali community, Muslim women, who in a group meeting very rarely raise their voice. We trained our CARE staff and local journalists in how to tell a story using photography and narration. And so the journalists, they worked with a group of women, a group of young men, and a group of elder men, and each of them built on what the community was saying to tell their own story. So the women, they were affected most by human and livestock diseases. And the way that they were coping is they'd set up a savings and loan group, and they were trying to support each other. And CARE is now working with them to say, okay, well, that's a coping strategy. What is it that you need to adapt long term? And that's kind of the work they're doing. So the video they made it's almost like a baseline, but it's a visual baseline. And now that the CARE staff knows how to make these digital photo stories, and the journalists, they will work with the community periodically in the next 4 years and making more videos with the same group of people saying, okay, well, last year, here's where we were at. Let's watch that. What's the next story we need to tell? So it's part of a process. It's not just a video for external audiences.
And what's been the response of the people living locally, the women and the men there? Have they been enthusiastic? Have they been keen to learn about it?
Yeah, and what's really interesting about the video itself is, like I said, women normally, women normally don't raise their voice when men are in the room. So we had a video showing with the tribal leaders and with other men who had made the video, probably about 20 people. The women sat in the back corner, and we had talked with them about it, and they said we were fearing. They were fearing to show the video because they didn't really understand how it was going to be shown, and they didn't know what their husbands might say. So we said, well, we'll show the men's videos and the men will watch it, and then we'll send them out of the room. Then you can watch the video and then you can decide what you want to do. So we showed the men's video, and the tribal leaders turned to the women and said, you're part of this community. We want to see your videos. And so they showed the videos during that setting. Then, because the women were way in the back, we sent the men out, had the women all crowd around and watch the video again, and had a discussion, and they're like, oh, we get it. We want everyone to see this. You know, like, get it out. Get it, you know, our husbands can see this. And they started to see the importance. And by having local journalists work with that, they also then understood more of what was happening in this community that's normally closed to media. And the women said, the journalists can come back and tell our stories because we recognize now the power of having our voice heard.
And do you think this is going to be something that, having your voice heard,
Yeah, having your voice heard.
do you think this is going to be something that continues and that grows, this method for giving people a voice and kind of using digital media? Do you think it's going to prove, well, it's already proving successful, but popular, do you think?
I think it is. It's a way to strengthen people's voice, to strengthen people's voice in a way much more than mine, that it's unique. I've done this process, I've worked in this process both in video and in film and photography in Nepal and in Vietnam and now Kenya and soon Mozambique. And the response to it is really strong because it takes people often, for an advocacy perspective, it's very strong because many times in an urban setting is where you have the people with power and the people that are making the decisions. And so you're able to take the voice of someone in a very accessible way into a setting where they might not have access due to resources, due to the distance and those type of things. But I think that it's not just extracting people's voice. And I think that that's where there is a huge potential once people start learning how to do that, that this is communications for development, that this is integral to the goals that you are trying to achieve within your project, which is often strengthening the voice of women in decision making. So once you start having women be part of a process like this, where they see the value in sharing their voice and they see that their voices and their opinions are valued, then that can actually translate into maybe the next time they're raising their voice in a meeting itself. Then, they're taking on more leadership roles. And really, the more strength that you have in the community of women, the stronger that community itself ends up being, and the more resilient that community ends up being.
So it's a catalytic effect, hopefully.
Exactly.
Well, it's really interesting to hear about it, and I'm conscious that we should make sure you keep your voice as well. So perhaps we can run that video now.
Can I make a quick disclaimer on the video? The one you're going to see is actually not participatory.
Okay.
But you can go up to careclimatechange.org, go into the video section, and go into the global videos, and there you'll see some of the participatory video that we're working on.
Okay.
But this will show CARE's work in climate change.
Lovely, thank you so much, and we'll run that video for you now.
Hands. Strong hands. Calloused hands. My hands. With my hands, I carry water far. Too far. I scrape at the land and plant. And plant again when the rains come late. Or not at all. I grasp for hope when the land floods. And reach out for food that isn't there. I watch the climate change around me. But I am also changing. We are changing. Young hands. Old hands. Our hands. With our hands, we plant mangroves to protect our homes from typhoons. We use seeds that grow hardier crops as rainfall patterns become harder to predict. We raise animals that can survive longer droughts and floods. With our hands, we plant trees for the future. and cook in ways that protect our environment. We build higher and stronger and better, and find new means to make money for our families. We are not victims of climate change. We are agents of change. We are learning, preparing, and planning the best we can as the world changes around us. But sometimes, it's not enough. Capable hands, active hands, your hands. Your hands can help those most vulnerable to climate change. You can demand that your government supports policies that build a better world. You can make wise choices about where your energy comes from and how you consume, commute, fly, and eat. Your hands, my hands, our hands. We all hold the power to help the planet and its people.